Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Shire Hall for a meeting of Warwickshire County Council Regulatory Committee. The first to be held following the election of the new County Council on May the 6th. My name is John Cook and I will be chairing this morning's meeting. Presenting Planning Officers Day are to my right Matthew Williams and to his right Sally Panayi. These are joined by our legal guru to my left is Ian Marriott. Okay. Committee Services Officer Helen Barnsley is sitting over there. Unfortunately, the table isn't big enough because of the social distancing things, but she's sitting over there. She will be recording our decisions, but more importantly, making sure I follow the agenda, making sure I don't make too many mistakes. What will happen next is as follows. Each item will be introduced by one of our planning officers with an on-screen presentation. I will then ask committee members if they have any technical questions that they would like to raise with the planning officers, who will then respond. Next, each of the speakers, if there are any who have pre-registered, will be called on to speak. Helen will ensure that you do not overrun your time. She's very good at that. And during the debate, can I ask that all speakers speak directly into the microphone? A microphone, if you haven't got one on your desk, when you indicate, will be brought to you. But it's very important that you do speak directly into the microphone. The committee will then debate the application and make its decision, which I will announce after a vote has been taken. During the debate, members, including myself, may well raise further questions and issues to which the planning officers or advisors may need to respond, and I will normally invite them to do so. Now, before we start considering the applications, the committee has a few legal and housekeeping matters to deal with. First one of those is apologies, and I have Councillor Adrian Warwick and Councillor Jeff Clark. Any others that we know of? No? Okay. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests. I see Chris Mills first, followed hotly by Councillor Judy Falk. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm the representative for that area, and on the first, representative for the area, and on application SDC, I believe 20CM009 Edge Hill Quarry. I have not spoken with or discussed this with Parish Council at all, or any residents. I did have a communication from Stephen Rice even before I was a councillor. I suggested we don't speak about this, and also I do know one of the speakers, which is Simon Pyle, but I feel I can approach this with an open mind, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Falk.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a non-pecuniary interest in item 6, which is Campion School. It's in my town ward of Whitnash, and I'm also a governor at the school, so I will withdraw from the meeting during that debate.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Before going on to the minutes, there is just something else that Helen has asked me to read to you, and that is that on our agenda, on our committee agenda, it omitted one or two things, so there is a slight amendment to our agenda papers. Councillor Kate Rolfe, as listed on the committee agenda, is no longer a member of this committee. Councillor Judy Falk is, however, a member of this committee and should have been included on the agenda. So I'm sorry about that, but you are here anyway. That's a good thing. Okay, thank you very much. The next item on our agenda item is number 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting, which I think was some date in April, which I can't remember. But is it your wish, please, that I sign those as a true and correct record? Those in favour of that, please show. That's quite clearly carried. Thank you. Right. We now need to get down to business, so we go straight to our agenda. Our first item on our agenda is planning application SDC 20CM009 Edge Hill Quarry, and I'm going to ask Matthew to start.
Chair. This application relates to Edge Hill Quarry, a former ironstone quarry in the village of Edge Hill. It's a site of 7.8 hectares, and the proposal is in two parts. I'm going to really be giving you an overview in this presentation. It's quite a detailed committee report, and I'll be showing you photographs and plans to give you an idea of the area and the proposal. The two-part proposal is the infilling of the site, including a recycling facility, and that would be with inert waste, and the restoration, which is the second part, would include habitat creation and 10 ecopods, which would be a recreation and leisure use. Just to give you an idea of where we're talking about, this is a plan showing you Edge Hill, and the red line shows the quarry boundary to the south of the village. And in terms of giving you an idea of the aerial shot, the brown area to the south of the village is the quarry site. Some of the key points just to pick out for you: you've got the village of Edge Hill, the village of Ratley. To the south, you've got the A422, you've got the National Trust property, Upton House, and to bear in mind as we go through, this is the route from the A422 that vehicles would take to get to the quarry. Just to go in slightly closer, you then have the entrance into the quarry at this point here. For those of you who are not familiar with the area, Edge Hill is on the top of the hill. To the west, it's quite a steep escarpment here. To the east, it's more of a rolling agricultural landscape. And again, just getting slightly closer, that shows you with a red line the site as it is existing to the south of the village. In terms of, you've got the main properties of the village in this general area. You also have isolated properties, if you want to call it that. This location here, residential dwelling. You have another one here, Edgecombe House, and White Bottoms Farm here. There are a couple of sort of small-scale commercial uses in the area. That was a transport yard, although I think it might have recently been replaced with a dwelling. And there's another sort of business in this location that has commercial vehicles using that site. The immediate surrounds, these are pony paddocks here, although going back in time, they were also part of the quarry, but have now been restored. And there's other areas around here that have been restored. Again, if you're familiar with the area, this area here on the edge of the village was what was Hornton Stonemasonry Company, and they were the company who operated the quarry back in time, with stone from the quarry being used by them to manufacture things like window mullions and fireplaces from stone. So that gives you an idea of the general location. As I say, the application is twofold. This is a proposal that has actually evolved over time. There was an original application which included a restoration of 29 park homes. That was withdrawn, and an amended scheme then came forward, which included with the restoration 4 affordable dwellings. Those have now been withdrawn from this proposal following further discussions, and the amount of material proposed from the original application is slightly reduced in amount, and the timescale for the development now is somewhat or it's been extended from the original proposal. The original proposal was 6 years, it's now 12 years proposed to infill the site. The infilling proposal would seek to restore the site to pre-existing levels, or to match in with the adjoining ground levels, and it would require 350,000 cubic metres of infill material to fill the void. This would take place, as I say, over a period of 12 years. The recycling facility would be located at the southern end of the quarry void, and I'll show you a plan in a second of that. The recycling operation would allow materials that can be recycled to be removed from the incoming materials and reused as aggregates in the construction material. It's envisaged that that would allow up to 20% of material to be removed and reused, with the residual then placed within the landfill. Initial site setup would include, would be a phased operation. So that's again just the red line around the site. These are plans showing the phasing, which I'll just take you through in each individually. This would be phase 1 of development, which would include improvement of the existing site access, so that would be reconstructed and constructed in concrete or tarmac into the site. They would then create a recycling area on this side of the site, which would be surrounded by earth bunds. The initial infilling or deposited material would start at the southern end of the site here. This southern end is a rock face that is of importance in terms of geological value, and the proposer would retain that rock face by creating sort of a valley at that end of the site. And then we would go into phase 2, which would be deposited material starting at the northern end of the site, working back towards the southern location. One thing I didn't mention, here, just on the edge of the site, is a stone agricultural barn, which is no longer used, but I'll make reference to that later. Then phase 3 would be working further towards the southern end of the site and infilling of the main area. And then phase 4 would be removal of the recycling facility and restoration of that final area. These plans, which might be difficult to see, just show how the profile of the site would be once infilled. So the brown area you're seeing there is infill material across the site, bringing the levels up to adjoining ground levels. As I said, the access into the site would be the existing access improved off Edge Hill Lane. The proposed development would generate 11 HGV movements a day coming into the site. The applicant proposes that all vehicles would be routed from the south, as I've said there, from the A422, and that they envisage that that would be controlled by a vehicle routing agreement. The proposed hours of operation of the development are 8 until 6 Monday to Friday and 8 until 1 on Saturdays. In terms of the restoration, this would be largely to a conservation and habitat creation, but it would also include the provision of a leisure after use, which is what's referred to as 10 eco-pods, and the eco-pods would be in this area here at the southern end of the site, with the remainder of the site, as I say, restored to an ecology type regeneration of the site. The access into the site going forward, once the site's restored for the after use, would be the same access as existing, and for the infilling operation with a roadway constructed towards the eco-pods. Just to show you you won't see that plan in detail, but it's just to show that a landscape planting scheme has been submitted, which includes a mix of appropriate species for the site to regenerate it. And then this is a photograph showing what an ecopod would appear as in terms of the units that are proposed for the site. Just to give you a bit of background to the site, as I say, it's a former ironstone quarry. It was operated going back in time by Hornton Masonry Company. Planning permissions for the extraction of stone go back to the 1980s, and in the late 1980s there was a permission granted for some partial infilling of the site, although that permission was not implemented. There is, as it stands, no formal approved restoration for the site. This is what has been brought forward with this application. Since 2017, the applicant has been on site and has been reworking former deposits of overburden that remained from the former mineral extraction. And again, I'll show you photographs of that shortly, but it's in essence, the materials are being reworked and they're generating stone for building and indeed aggregates for the construction industry. As I said, this application is a resubmission of one that came in earlier. This proposal has had significant public interest from the local community. That includes residents of Edge Hill and Ratley. We've received 36 representations from the local community, plus representations from Ratley and Upton Parish Council, Radway Parish Council, the Cotswold AONB Conservation Board, CPRE, National Trust and the MP Jeremy Wright. Comments and observations are set out in detail within the report. As I say, I'm seeking to give you an overview here, but I can take questions on those as we go forward. Whilst there was an acceptance of some aspects of the proposed development within some of the representations made, the overriding consensus is one of strong objection to this application from the local community. I think that the main point relates to the infilling and the recycling, but to a lesser degree there's also concern raised with the proposed after use and the leisure use. I think the key points that have been raised, be fair to say, are principle of the development in this location, traffic and transport impacts, amenity, that's noise and dust impacts, the proposed hours of operation, the overall timescale of the development, and the landscape impact of the development proposals. In terms of policy considerations that need to be judged when this application is considered, there's a number of factors to consider. Those are the location of waste facilities and the need for landfilling and recycling, whether the development would conserve or enhance the AONB in the short and long term, whether the development meets the locational criteria for tourism, and whether objections can be met by reasonable and enforceable conditions. Again, the report goes into some of those in quite some detail. The key points, I think, that the report picks out are restoration of mineral workings with beneficial after use is very much supported by planning policy and the development plan. The waste hierarchy seeks to recover and reuse materials where possible, but it also acknowledges that some materials can't be recycled and there is always a need to landfill those inert materials, which is clearly part of this proposal. The proposal does, however, incorporate a recycling facility. This would enable materials that can be recovered to be recovered and reused, and this would be an integral part of the overall waste management operation, and that, in principle, is supported by policy. The need to infill the site at all is a point that is questioned by some of the responses received. The proposal as is presented to you and as the applicant has put the proposal forward is one to infill the site, and that is part of the restoration proposal. And what you need to consider today is the proposal that's put forward acceptable? In this case, the proposed infilling would provide the ability to restore the site and give a long-term restoration proposal for the site. In terms of the AONB is recognised for landscape and scenic beauty, and there is great weight given to conservation and enhancement of the AONB. The existing quarry void, I think it has to be said, and I'll show you photographs, it does very much appear as a quarry void, and in that respect it is not making a positive contribution to the AONB designation or the landscape character of it. The proposals would secure infilling and restoration, which in the long term will be beneficial and a permanent enhancement of the AONB. The development would take 12 years, and that impact on the AONB is something that needs to be judged. The site is an existing quarry and appears as a quarry, and the operations that are proposed within the site are in many respects similar to the operations that took place during the mineral extraction and the ongoing reprocessing operations that are currently taking place on site. The site is reasonably well screened, and which helps to minimise the visual impact of existing operations, and it's considered that will help screen the proposed operations. Vehicle movements clearly are a consideration also to consider within the AONB, and in that respect the proposed vehicle movements are just above the vehicle numbers that are currently permitted on the site with the existing operation, and those numbers can be controlled by condition, and routing can also be controlled. Policies within the Stratford District Local Plan Core Strategy seek to support the rural economy and includes tourism and leisure. The proposed restoration and after use is something that is supported by those policies within an area that is noted and considered to be attractive to visitors. So in that respect, it's considered that the after use and the leisure use is something that is supported and is appropriate to the AONB setting. Just going through briefly the amenity issues that have been raised and the wider issues to consider. The site is close to the village, as I've shown in the photographs and the aerial view, and close to residential properties. In terms of noise, operations of equipment on sites such as this clearly are noise-generating operations. The recycling operation and the recycling facility has been designed with earth bunds around it to limit noise impacts, and the hours of operation that are proposed are they match the hours of operation that are currently allowed on the site for the existing operations. And a noise assessment submitted with the application demonstrated that the noise that would be generated by the activities could be controlled to an acceptable level. The Environmental Health Department at Stratford District have been consulted on the application, and they are in agreement with the noise assessment, subject to conditions being imposed, which are again reflect the conditions on the existing operations. They are happy with the proposal in that respect. They also, in addition, propose a condition or suggest a condition is imposed to ensure that noise monitoring is undertaken going forward should this proposal be supported. In terms of air quality, measures to control dust are proposed, and a dust and air quality assessment was submitted with the application. This proposes that a dust management plan is included within the proposed development and management of the development, and the results of that assessment conclude that dust would be unlikely to cause adverse impacts. Again, the Environmental Health Officer has commented on the application and agrees with those conclusions. In terms of landscape impact, the site is a quarry void and appears as a quarry void, although the hedges around the site do limit views into the site. The landscape impact needs to be considered in short and long term, and a landscape impact assessment was submitted with the application. This concluded that there would be no significant effects on the landscape in the short and long term. Warwickshire County Council's landscape team have looked at this application, and they consider that the proposals, again in the short and long term, would have minimal landscape impact and that the restoration would be beneficial in the long term. In terms of transport and vehicle movements, significant concern is raised by the local community in terms of vehicle numbers and routing and impact on the village and residential amenity and the properties within the village. The current permission allows up to 10 vehicles to access the site a day in respect of the existing recycling operation, and the proposal proposes 11 vehicle movements or 11 vehicles per day. And this would use the existing access, which would be improved. The proposed development within the application proposes all vehicles would be routed directly from the A422 along Edge Hill Lane, and no vehicles would access the site through the village. In terms of the route proposed, this is acceptable in highway terms, and a formal routing agreement can be secured to ensure that vehicles use that route. In terms of the operation of the site, wheel washing facilities are proposed, as well as facilities to make sure that the road remains clean. And again, that can be secured by condition. In the long term, with the EcoPod after use and the leisure use, the proposals include footways to link the application site to the village, and again, that can be secured by condition. In terms of the long-term restoration of the site, clearly, as I've said, there's largely an ecological biodiversity benefit from the site, and that would be the vast proportion of the site in the long term, and those benefits could be secured through conditions and management plans that would be appropriate. In terms of the waste types going into the site, again, concern has been raised about the potential waste types going into the site. The application proposes that the site would handle process and deposit inert waste. And that would be controlled through an environmental permit, which the applicant would need to secure from the Environment Agency, and the Environment Agency would then in turn, upon a permit being secured, they would monitor that and manage that process. And as I said, the proposal is for inert materials only, and a condition is proposed to secure that type of waste only going into the site. If I can just take you through, this is just a plan that shows clearly the after use is a leisure use, and this just gives you an indication of the footpath network immediately around the site, and it's quite a popular area for walking in that area, and there's various routes that just go through the village. These are photographs taken of the site literally last week. This photograph and the next couple are taken from the barn I've showed you on the plan earlier. So this photograph is taken from what would be natural ground level, looking down across the site, and you'll see, in essence, that is what's happening on site at the moment, which is reworking of spoil that was left by the previous operator of the site, and the applicant is getting stone out that can be reused locally and processing material into aggregates. So that's just a general scene across the site again of what's going on as we speak today. This is going into the northern corner of the site, and again you'll see these are materials that have been recovered from the previous materials on site. Just going further into the corner, this gives you an idea of the faces around the edge of the site. So this is up here, this is the hedge line adjacent to the road. So this gives you an indication of sort of the drop off from the edge of the highway and surrounding land levels. Again, that's just another view of the site and the boundary. Going back across towards the middle of the site and adjoining neighbouring land levels. We then just go towards the southern end of the site. You can't see it very well, but this is the southern boundary. And again, that's the hedgerow and adjoining land levels higher up from the floor of the quarry. And this is the face below that hedge line that would be retained as a geological exposure going forwards. This is the western side of the site, and this would be the general area where the recycling operation would take place. And again, just a view into where the recycling operation would take place. The access into the site is just in that top corner there, alongside that tree line. And the access comes down to the site there. Again, just some further views of what's going on. That's just to give you an indication of what they're currently doing, getting stone out of the overburden piles that were on site, and that's going into local walling schemes. Again, the type of plant and equipment that they're currently using on site, more of the plant and equipment that's currently used on site to screen and separate the materials, it would be similar type material used going forward on the recycling operation. Again, just more views across the site. Then this is just showing you what the access looks like today into the site. This, as I say, would be reconstructed and improved with hard bound material access. And then this view shows you what the boundaries are like around the site. They're quite high, well-established hedgerows, which do limited views into the site, I think is probably fair to say. Right, this is Google Street View I'm just showing you here. So this is the A22, and this is the junction where you would turn off to get towards the site on Edge Hill Lane. This again shows you general views along the lane that the HGVs would use to access the site. Just, as I say, general views of the nature of the road. Again, this is the point where we get to the access into the site, so all vehicles would turn right in. And then just to show you what the village is like and the points that have been raised by the local community, you get to a 30-mile-an-hour limit quickly past the site entrance, and then you get to where the streets or the road narrows. You've got residential properties tight up to the highway, parking on the highway. This is the pub in the village, the castle. Again, you've got vehicles parking on the right. On a nice sunny day, as it was last Wednesday, there's a lot of cars parked on that highway. But as I say, HGVs would not use this route, but this is just to give you an example. Again, further views through the village. Some of these properties are listed buildings in themselves. This is a view back in the opposite direction, back through the village. And then just, again, the last view through the village. So if I can just conclude, this is a development that proposes the infilling and restoration of the site over a 12-year period. As I've outlined, the quarry is close to the village, and the operations that would be undertaken by their nature could have an adverse impact if they're not adequately controlled and managed. Consultation with statutory consultees has demonstrated that appropriate conditions and controls can be imposed to allow this development to take place. The proposed development would secure restoration and after use of the site, which would be beneficial in the long term. The impacts on the AONB can be minimised during the development, and again, the restoration in the long term would be beneficial. The recycling facility proposed would allow material to be recovered and reused, which is supported in general terms by policy. And the waste materials would then be put to a positive use, both taken off-site, and those that can't be recovered would be used in the restoration. The leisure and after use of the site is a small-scale recreational development of 10 eco-pods. Again, this is supported in general terms by policy and is something that is accepted in terms of the response received from Stratford District Council. In this respect, the development accords in overall terms of the development plan. On balance, it's considered as one that can be supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. We go on to technical questions now for members. Councillor Kerridge, you're first out of the loop. Can you wait for a microphone to come to you?
So, first, I've got a whole list, sorry. Stratford District Council, does this go through their planning committee, or do their officers just make comments on this? Okay. Technical questions. Is the wheel wash going to be visible from the road, or is it an internal thing?
Recycling facility is this area here. That would be developed on the base of the quarry at the lower level as it is today, and the wheel wash would be within that recycling area, which is bunded around.
Okay, thank you. Our waste strategy, Warwickshire's waste strategy, this is outside, as far as I understand from the report, this is outside the recommended locations for such a development. Am I correct?
If it was a recycling facility purely on its own, proposed in that location without the overall scheme, which is the restoration and infilling of the site, I think it would be very difficult to support recycling on its own in that location. But as a integral part of the overall development, it is one that's considered that can be supported in that location.
Balancing the positives and negatives.
Yes.
So there doesn't seem to be a needs assessment for this in this location. Was there any alternative location sought, which for me, within I think the Stratford District Council policy, if it's in an AONB, then there needs to be a sort of an alternative requirement and an assessment of need. Am I completely incorrect on that by your look? But
it's slightly different with minerals and waste, because clearly it's a quarry that's a quarry void, and it is where it is. So the applicant has come at it looking at that basis. That said, within the application, they have undertaken an assessment of waste arisings and the need for landfill and recycling, and that concludes that it is something that can be supported in that location, and we would, in general terms, agree with that.
okay, I didn't see anything about that in in the report,
Okay.
but I'll take that as read. So also, just to clarify, at the moment, the permission to act on that site, to carry out the current activities on that site, runs until sometime later this year.
Yep.
And also the requirement for any kind of restoration needs to be sorted by the end of this year.
Yeah, there's an existing temporary permission that allows the, as I say, spoils that are located on the site to be recovered, which is the ongoing operation at the moment.
So next year there will be no permissions extant on this land unless we create some.
If this application is not supported and no application is submitted to extend the life of the existing operation, yes, that permission would expire.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mills, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. The operating hours from 8 till what time of truck movements?
It was 8 till 6 Monday to Friday and 8 till 12 or 1 on
8 till, sorry, 8 till?
Just bear with me. 8 till 6 Monday to Friday and 8 until 1 on Saturdays.
My maths being absolutely awful, how many movements per hour is that?
Would it be around 1 movement per hour?
Yeah, about one
Or
movement.
1 load per hour?
So it'll be
potentially?
1 truck per hour, okay. And on page 13, 1.8, it says the application states that the inert waste will be collected from demolition and construction sites within the immediate locality. So, immediate locality, where would that be? If it's immediate, to me, it's immediate, it's close.
Yeah, that is difficult to be definitive on because clearly waste arise where development is taking place, and you don't know today necessarily where development is going to be going immediately into the future. But waste arisings of an inert material are not a high value material and they generally do not travel a huge distance, so it will be within the surrounding area, but it's not just the village, it'll be a wider area. Say Stratford, say possibly as far as Banbury.
So Stratford's not quite immediate, is it?
It's not too far away, I would suggest.
12 miles. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Simpson Vince, followed by Councillor Feen. Councillor Simpson Vince.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions at the moment. With the vehicle movements, if lorries come out of there and turn right and go through the village, where do they end up? Where does that road go? Sorry, I'm not massively over familiar with that
road,
area.
if you follow it, goes towards Kyneton and Gaydon.
Okay, because sat-navs and lorry drivers will take the route of least resistance, so it's kind of just curious as to where that route went, so that it would encourage them to turn left, because turning right just isn't going to work. There's no shortcut by turning right anyway.
Well, the applicant, as I say, is proposing that all vehicles come in from the A422, so they're not going through the village. They have envisaged that we would seek to control that through a vehicle routing agreement. If this was accepted and lorries then did not comply with that vehicle routing agreement, they would be in breach of it, and we would have to enforce that.
Okay. The second one, and this is to do with the volume that needs to be infilled. So originally, I can't find it in here, but I remember reading, we started at 400,000 cubic metres, and we're now at 350,000 cubic metres. And we're talking about a height of 5 metres at some areas on this site. But from some of the photos, it looks like it's a lot less than 5 metres in quite a lot of the site. I know there's a slide in here with the elevations, but my eyesight's not that good, so I can't see what the heights are at different parts of the site. So it's 5 metres at and presumably that's where it's against the roads and you've got those steep banks.
It is variable depths across the site, and the profiles that I showed do show it to be slightly variable. But yeah, 5 metres would probably be the greatest depth.
So what are we losing on the 50,000 cubic metres that was originally being considered to this? Presumably that doesn't take it to a completely flat infill.
Well, it's a reasonably level restoration scheme you'd get. I think the dropping the 50,000 has, in essence, reduced the overall levels to a degree, but it's not significant over the overall site when it's across the whole site.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Feeney is next. After that will be Councillor Humphreys and then Councillor Pyle.
Thank you. I've only got a couple of questions. The first question related to the highways impact, because on the objects or the comments noted from the residents, there was a concern about the corner that and I did notice on the street view map it does look quite tight, and our highways assessment doesn't actually refer to that, and I just wondered whether there had been any views around, you know, the potential risk for accidents, because it does look like there could be. And the other thing was, and it's a technical term that I've never heard of, so apologies, you might have to do an explanation for councillors what do not know. It talks about the dark place, because there's some concerns about the hours of operation and lighting, I guess, in the winter time. So I just wondered what that was and whether there were restrictions on that.
Just in terms of the junction onto the A422, the application has been assessed by your highways officers, and they have not raised any concerns with the level of traffic, the nature of the traffic using that junction. In terms of the dark place, it relates to the fact that it is a rural area and there is not a great deal of nighttime light in that area. So again, there's a desire to ensure that any lighting that is proposed on sites is sensitive to that and reflective of that location.
Thank you. I just wondered if it was a specific term that I didn't know of in terms of planning legislation. Thank you.
Councillor Humphreys is next.
Thank you very much. I'm just looking very simply at the maths. You said there's 11 vehicle moves in a day. I take it that would be 22. What comes in goes out.
Yes.
Well, I'm just looking at 42,500 tonnes of inert demolition material arriving every year, and assuming there's going to be like a 50-week working year, just make it. That means actually they're going to be bringing 77 tonnes in every day. No, sorry, not 77 tonnes. That means you'll have to. I've only got grade C when it comes to O-level maths. I'm very sorry. That's 850 tonnes a week, and if you divide that by 11 vehicles, that would work out at 77 tonnes per week per vehicle. That's effectively, with the loads of those types of vehicles, it'd be about 3 times more number of vehicle moves. So are those numbers correct in terms of vehicle moves, in terms of the amount of stuff coming on board?
Well, those are, the applicant has done their figures, and they are presenting that as the amount of material that's required. As I say, they are proposing 11 vehicles a day, and that is something we would seek to condition. So they would be restricted by that if that was a condition that was imposed on any planning permission granted.
I'm sorry, sir, you can't speak at the moment. Councillor Pyle.
Thank you. It's quite a simple one. Why is it better to run this over 12 years rather than 6?
Okay, the original application proposed 6 years for the infilling, and the proposal then would have seen more material brought in on an annual basis and a higher number of vehicle numbers on a daily basis. The applicant has amended the proposal, which would, it elongates the development, but it would mean less vehicle movements on a daily basis. There are wider issues to why they've thought about that as well, but the applicant will perhaps be able to explain that when they comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other technical questions? Oh, Councillor Coates, come back.
Sorry, forgot this one. One of the comments on page 38 was about a permission granted in Oxfordshire for a similar operation. I wonder if there's any information on if that actually is a similar information. It's 3.6 there.
Yeah, I'm aware of it. I don't know an awful lot of detail about it, but again, our policy in terms of recycling is seeking for, I suppose, the minimum level of recycling requirements across the county. It's not a maximum level, and therefore this application has been considered on that sort of aspect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kenner.
Thank you, Chair. This, my question just relates to the number of vehicle movements a day. At the moment, it says 11 HGV movements a day. Now, does that include Saturdays, where the number of work hours is halved? Does the number of vehicle movements expect to go down by half, or are we expecting 2 vehicle movements an hour?
No, as it's proposed, it would potentially mean you could have 11 vehicles come within that shorter period on a Saturday.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Right, that concludes our technical questions. We now need to go to members of the public who have pre-indicated they wish to speak. For the objectors, I've got Adrian Berry first, please. Mr. Berry?
Okay, thank you.
I think, oh, sorry, waiting. Mr. Berry, I think Helen will let you know when you can start. Okay.
Right, thank you, Chairman. Ratley Upton Parish Council has held 2 consultation meetings with parishioners to assess local opinion about this application. The first pre-lockdowns was a face-to-face in the village hall. The second was held online via the Parish Council Zoom meeting. Both were well attended. Both meetings highlighted parishioners' significant concerns about the environmental pollution impacts of the proposed quarry infill, especially as the site is in the Cotswolds area of outstanding natural beauty. These concerns come down to traffic, noise, dust and light pollution. The proposal will result in a significant increase of heavy lorry traffic along the unclassified country lane from the A422 to Edge Hill. This road is well used by cyclists, horses and walkers. Naturally, there are concerns about the increased risks of accidents. Parishioners are concerned that the lorries will travel to or from the site through the villages of Edge Hill and Ratley, irrespective of any requirements not to do so. Edge Hill is a particular concern because the road is narrow, houses are built directly onto the road and there is existing congestion caused by Castle Inn patrons parking along the road. The junction in Ratley is difficult, visibility is poor, there is a blind brow just by the junction and the road passes by the children's playground. The proposal says that lorries will be obliged to approach the site from the A422, which is from the south, and on leaving the site, turn back onto the A422. Again, this is to the site. This might be enforceable, but there is nothing to stop vehicles using the parallel road to the east, Lone Oakley's Grain Lange, to get to or from the A422 from the north, e.g. Kyneton or Gaydon or Banbury or any of the places around there. Using this road, they could go through either Edge Hill or Ratley while still complying with the directional restrictions. There is low confidence in signage as the existing weight restriction through Edge Hill is not presently enforced. Okay. This is a quiet country area with low background noise. The existing stone sorting operation in the quarry can be heard in Edge Hill and as far away as Ratley when the wind is right. The proposal compares the site noise to traffic. This is misleading as traffic on country lanes is intermittent, but the site noise will be continuous for 5.5 days a week. Dust from the existing site operation settles all over Edge Hill and sometimes in Ratley. Parishioners were expecting the existing operation and pollution to cease a year or so ago when the stone was worked out. Unfortunately, the pandemic has delayed the ending, and this proposal will extend activities for a long time to come. Ratley and Upton Parish has very low levels of light pollution, meaning that night skies are filled with stars and the Milky Way can often be seen. reflections and spillage from any lighting used on... Okay, thank you.
Right, our next speaker is Veronica Walters, please. That's it.
I am speaking today as a resident of Edge Hill to object to this application for a recycling and recovery facility with an operating term of 12 years. According to the Warwickshire Waste Core strategy, such recycling facilities should be situated on the boundaries of established towns with industry and comprehensive transport links. Edge Hill is a rural historic hamlet situated in an AONB and does not conform to those requirements. There will be a greatly increased volume of HGV traffic, and I am not reassured by the declaration contained within the planning statement regarding the routing of these vehicles along the main A422. As we currently experience, there is HGV flow to and from this site that takes the weight-restricted road through the village of Edge Hill, as this is more expeditious for the vehicle driver. It is more than likely that such transgression will continue, and the impact of an increased daily flow travelling through such a small hamlet 6 days a week for 12 years will be immense. There are minor pavements in Edge Hill, and pedestrians are compelled to walk on the road and will be extremely vulnerable. The Section 106 to which reference is made will need to be enforced, which will come at a cost to the County Council, assuming that there is sufficient manpower to deal with the transgressions in a timely manner. The quality of the restoration materials to be recycled was stated by Mr. Ian Grace, Principal Planner of WCC, as being of very poor quality and containing a large percentage of plastic contamination. It is my concern that any infill will continue to be poor and not beneficial to the environment or the land, and there is also the possibility of asbestos being present in demolition waste. The noise and vibration originating from vehicles and heavy machinery, despite the proposed mitigating fencing, which has its limitations, will cause great disturbance to Edge Hill residents who presently experience noise from the site. The impact upon local air quality through emissions from on-site operations, vehicle movements, dust and odour are worrying. It is stated within the application that there is likely to be what is termed slight adverse effects as a result of dust. On a windy day, nearby properties are currently subjected to dust, and the proposed installation of dust receptors does not regulate the distribution of dust, merely records it. In conclusion, the construction of such a facility is an inappropriate development for Edge Hill and will not protect or enhance the quality and character of our valued landscape or offer any benefit to residents in or visitors to this AONB. It will have enduring and negative consequences to our lives, and I therefore hope that the Planning Committee will safeguard our local community and beautiful locality by rejecting this application. Thank you for your attention.
And thank you for sticking within the time limit too. Thank you very much. Lastly, of the objectors on this application, I've got Michael Adkins, please. How long is it? It's 3 minutes. It's 3 minutes, but you better wait until the microphone gets to you. That's it. Off you go.
Hold, please, just a moment. I have lived in Edge Hill for the past 10 years and strongly oppose this application. I consider it ill-advised for this area, and the Cotswold Conservation Board's report would appear to endorse this. The previous application suggested advantages for the local and wider community. This was clearly disputed at a general meeting held in Ratley some 18 months ago. The mood was very much against the application, and valid concerns were raised on many aspects of it. This has always been a venture with profit as its sole objective, window dress to appear more acceptable, which it clearly is not. The various surveys commissioned by the applicant at best give considerable cause for concern and rely on best practice. It appears some control provisions are left to the goodwill of the applicant to fulfil. An opportunity to demonstrate such good stewardship and public responsibility occurred some 2 years ago. Edge Hill was subjected to excessive noise nuisance every day for a period of many months, and this despite objections to the applicant. I spoke to a plant machine operator, and the matter was well known but being ignored. It was only by the council's intervention that the noise was finally stopped. It was, I believed, identified as a machine bearing, quite easy to have had repaired. But a worse threat to human well-being and health than future noise is the dust that will be created and blown over Edge Hill by the prevailing wind. There is no guarantee that it will not contain dangerous substances, potentially asbestos. Vehicular access is of extreme concern. To lorry drivers, whether employed or contracted and under pressure to achieve as many drops as possible, the shortest route is the most attractive. And if this should lie through Edge Hill, there will be no independent, permanent monitoring to control or even discourage it. And if lorries are made to turn left on site exit away from Edge Hill, they can turn left and left again, and within half a mile be on a route to take them back through the village. Edge Hill already has an accepted traffic problem. It is a narrow road, people parking, crossing the road from the car park to the pub, and this very much includes children. Pedestrians are already at risk. Please do not add to their danger by enabling the possibility of these huge and totally unsuitable vehicles passing through the village, quite possibly carrying hazardous and ill-covered waste. Their dust uncontrolled over visitors and residents alike as they shake the foundations of our old houses. Edge Hill is a popular and historic venue for walkers, cyclists and nature lovers. This proposal threatens to impact their safe enjoyment of our countryside in an alarming manner. 1 year would be a year too long. 12, or quite probably more, is unthinkable.
Right, we now, ladies and gentlemen, move on to Stephen Rice and Simon Pyle, who are going to speak on behalf of the applicants. Mr. Rice, please. I don't know where he is. Oh, there he is, down there. So.
Thank you. Is the microphone working? Can everybody hear me? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ditch the pre-prepared talk, so you'll have to bear with me. And can you let me know when I have a minute left, please? I think it would be more useful for me to try to address some of the issues that have been raised, particularly by councillors. Firstly, I'd like to just clarify completely that a routing agreement will not allow any vehicles to pass through this village, whether by the back road off the quarry or not. It is quite categorically clear they will not be allowed through the village. It will be enforceable, and I would fully expect the council to do so. We haven't asked villagers to take photographs of lorries that they claim are going through the village from the site to date. So far, we've had no feedback. We've not been able to action or do anything about these so-called lorries that are coming from the site, and we don't believe that they are. Secondly, the material. Can I just make it absolutely clear? Every site like this is not only regulated by the council, it's regulated by the Environment Agency. This is inert soils and clays coming into this site for processing, with some stone that will be taken out of it for reuse. It will not include asbestos or any other hazardous materials. It simply cannot. If the operator were to bring that in, he would face criminal prosecution by the Environment Agency. It simply won't happen, trust me. Can I just deal also with this period of time? We originally proposed a shorter period of 6 years because we were proposing a more valuable end use on the site, which meant that the material could be brought in at a much lower gate value, thus competing well with other operators. Unfortunately, the more valuable end use was not acceptable to either Stratford or the locals, and they had to be dropped. This means that this site would have to operate in competition with other sites taking in this material, and we therefore allow 12 years. Obviously, the operator will try to close it out faster than that if they can, because they too want to get it finished and get the end use on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also just like to point out the advantages that this site will actually deliver for the locals. This is at the moment an unrestored quarry. There is very little control over what goes on in it, whether that be antisocial uses. We've heard the current permission will finish this year. After that period of time, it's unknown as to what will happen to it. Once it's restored, we've made it clear that there will be footpaths created through the site to create a link with the public footpaths that are at the moment only accessible by walking along the road. We will be able to deliver footpaths that cut across the site, which will be restored, as you said. 96% of that site is to be restored for biodiversity and ecology. If the locals had engaged with us like we tried, we firmly believe that we could have delivered, and we will deliver, a project that will be of long-term benefit for the village. Thank you.
You must have had a stopwatch going there. Thank you. Right, next I've got Mr. Simon Pyle, please, who's immediately behind. That's it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Are we ready to start? Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Simon Pyle and I work with the applicant at Edgehill Quarry. The site is currently operated under an extant permission to recover the remaining Hornton stone. I would like you to note that there has only been one formal complaint in the last 5 years, received in 2017, relating to a failed bearing on a machine, as mentioned. Which was then repaired, and certainly there have been no other complaints about noise, dust or traffic since that date. Once the recovery of the Hornton stone is completed, the quarry will remain unsightly and will be vulnerable to antisocial uses. In addition to your permission, as your officer noted, the site will require an Environment Agency permit to be operational. These permits are only issued if the EA is satisfied that the operator meets the necessary criteria, including a waste recovery plan. That demonstrates that the processes do not have an adverse environmental impact. The EA will continue to monitor the site in addition to council officers, and this has the power to stop operations if there's any breach of the permit and, if necessary, enforce by criminal prosecution. Satisfying all concerns when proposing development is very difficult. Whilst not seeking to diminish or belittle the concerns of the 36 people who felt strongly enough to raise their concerns, there are, however, only a small percentage of a parish of over 300 people, according to the latest census, 327. I also note that some households have made more than one representation. This application has taken into account the views expressed previously by local residents with the amended scheme. I believe it is very important to remember that the management of this site will be monitored not only by the council's own officers, but also by those of the Environment Agency. And I am confident that if you give permission, the site will operate as described in the application with no adverse environmental impact. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much, sir. Right, that concludes the public speakers. Are any members of the planning committee, the regulatory committee? I must get the terms right. That's a Freudian slip. Any members of the regulatory committee like to ask any of our witnesses a question? Councillor Matetsky. Hang on, wait a second. That's it.
Sorry, a question was asked earlier about the volume of aggregate that's going to be put into the place. And also there was a question asked about the number of vehicles, and I think the answer that you gave, Matthew, was that the reason it was extended to 12 years instead of 6 years was because of the reduction in the number of vehicles. So can I first of all ask, in the original plan, how many vehicles were planned to be visiting the site?
But the original plan was for 400,000 cubic metres of material to come in over 6 years. This is for 350,000 over 12 years. So it's probably a little over double was proposed at that time.
But there must have been a number of vehicles proposed to visit the site.
Yeah, there would have been, but as I say...
Originally, can the applicant...
Can the applicant answer that, please? What were the original number of vehicles planning to visit the site?
From memory, I believe it was somewhere in the region of 30-something, but I couldn't tell you exactly what the 30-something figure was. But from memory, I believe it was 30-something vehicles.
30 vehicles or 30 journeys?
30 vehicles.
Which would have been 60 journeys. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Councillor Tetsi. Right, Councillor Mills, please.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just on the glamping pods, what is the time scale for these glamping pods to be installed? I mean, are we talking about the end of 12 years or before that?
Who can assist us on that one?
Does anybody know?
The applicant, please. Can you give us some advice on that?
I can, yes. They would be in phase 3 from memory, and if everything went to plan, it would be year 7 or 8 before they would be able to go in.
Okay.
Right, so it will go in year 7, and obviously the infilling will be carrying on for another 5 years after that.
Is that right?
Correct.
Another 5 years after that, yes.
Around the glamping pods, yes?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Right then, councillors, that completes all the questions, etc., etc. So we now move into debate. Who would like to start on this one? Oh, look. Oh, Councillor Simpson-Vince, please, followed by Councillor Mills. Off you go, Jill.
Thank you. Do you know, I read this one and I read it again and I read it again, and I'm still not quite sure where I am on this one. The 12 years, the applicant has said that could come down, that could happen sooner, and it might not be the 12 years. So we're looking at a maximum rather than this is how long it's going to take. With that in mind, can we look at Condition 19, which deals with hours of operation? I know that those hours are standard for developments and all sort of construction, things like that. We see that in lots of policies. Could we take out the Saturdays? Because coming back to a point made earlier about the 22 HGV movements a day, that could apply to a Saturday as well. Just see how other committee members feel about that. But I think if the Saturdays came out and that would then deal with the vehicle movements on a Saturday, if we're looking at a 12-year maximum, what does this add to the timeline? Yeah, I just kind of want to get a bit of an idea of where the other committee members are on that point, really. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Mills, and if you'd like to comment on Jill's comments as well, by all means.
Right, thank you. I'll comment on my own comments, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things. The vehicle movements, I did ask earlier about immediate localities, and Matthew said, well, it could be Stratford, which is immediate. That's a little concerning, because if it is coming from Stratford, they've either got to come across country or up the M40. They've either got to come through Kyneton or from Banbury. Then they've got to go up either Sunrising or Edge Hill, which will be a nightmare. I mean, if they've got to go through Kyneton, it's almost impossible. That is a worry. And also, the glamping pods. I mean, if we could wait for 7 years for the glamping pods to go in, and then you've got another 5 years of infilling around the glamping pods, I'm not sure any happy campers would be wanting to get into a glamping pod with all this paraphernalia around them. So just a little bit concerning, Mr. Chairman, on that one. So,
okay, thank you very much. Councillor Matetsky.
Thank you. I got
Councillor Matetsky, can you bring your microphone a bit closer, please? Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a few concerns about this proposal. And quite a few of the concerns that I had were raised by my fellow members, and one of them is road access, and it's just been mentioned. And we're first of all told that soil and waste is going to be brought from the locality, yet there's only going to be one access route, which is from the south. And I sort of tend to agree with another comment about sat-navs and stuff. If people are coming from the north and other directions, are they really going to be going all the way south to come to actually approach from the south? But I think the bit that I have a problem with, and I'd like to know what other members think, is the recycling facility. And the bit I picked up on from the gentleman who spoke first in favour of the application was that the reason it was extended to 12 years was because of the value. So this is just a commercial enterprise. Now, I can understand the recycling facility being on site to a certain degree because that's where you're going to be infilling, but I also can see that it can be situated anywhere else in a more appropriate position. And the waste that's needed to fill it could come from that facility, wherever it comes from. So the question I have to my fellow members is does the location of the recycling facility on site overweigh the other losses? It is an area of outstanding national beauty. It is a historic site, Edge Hill, and all that. And that is the problem that I have. Does it overweigh having it on site? So that's a big question.
Thank you. Councillor Kerridge, please.
Chair, are we in debate? Sorry.
Yes, we are.
Okay, good. Well, to answer Councillor's questions about conditions, yes. I mean, if this was to go forward, I think having this activity on a Saturday in an AONB is inappropriate. So I'd certainly be in favour of restricting that part of the condition. It may be a standard set of hours that is applied to almost everything. I've seen this always. However, this is an AONB, and that is, you know, something very different to normal. It's also very close to a community, which is, I think, quite unusual for a waste processing plant. As for the actual activities of waste processing in this location, I'm absolutely against the idea. I think it's so close to a village. It's even closer to several properties. And to have this kind of waste processing so close is just totally inappropriate in a countryside location where the background noise is largely birds, you know, and occasional cars and cyclists, no doubt, shouting. So the noise, however attenuated or limited it may be by conditions, will be there. It will not be removed, it will be there. And however low, it will be a background noise, which is not there now, and will be there for 12 years. Although some activity does occur now, that activity is scheduled to cease. So there's no future use of this land as any kind of waste processing or quarry. There's no planning application existent that would have this land being used for anything which would cause such noise and disturbance, be it HGVs, be it dust, be it noise, be it litter. That will cease by the end of this year. So we're not comparing what's going on now with, you know, what can go on in the future. What can go in the future if we do not accept this is nothing, is peace and quiet, which is appropriate for an AONB. And I come back to the AONB because the whole point of them is that they are tranquil and beautiful. The AONB Management Committee, the AONB policies all stress the tranquility of an area. So I think it is even more inappropriate that a waste processing plant like this should exist in that location, certainly for 12 years. Our own waste management strategy suggests this is not an area, whether it was an AONB or not, where there should be this kind of process going on. I think I'll just leave it there for now. I may come back later. But I think that the key issue is that it is an AONB, and we should consider that incredibly strongly. We are asked to, as a planning committee, be it regulatory or what, to pay particular attention to the nature of an AONB, and that is my main thing. However little HGV traffic there will be some, and it is inappropriate here. And there would be none if we do not grant this. However little dust, however little noise, there would be none, but there will be some if we grant this.
Thank you. Councillor Mills is next, followed by Councillor Falp.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm also a little bit concerned about the disturbance to wildlife. They said having this site will attract wildlife, but I think over 12 years of trucks trundling around, it's going to frighten the wildlife off, and it'll be some time before it creeps back. And I can't see any benefits to the residents. We were told that one of the benefits would be a footpath across the site, but I'm not sure anybody would want to walk through a glamping pod site to get anywhere. It's not a good walk. So, Mr. Chairman, at the moment I'm not too keen on this application, so anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Falp, please.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Start by saying, yes, I think if we do grant it, I wouldn't like to see Saturday operation. I think residents do have some time at home at the weekend, which they hope will not be disturbed. So I'm fully in favour of that. I can see why now it's 12 years and not 6, because you can imagine 30 vehicles a day, double to 60, because they're going to get there and back, so I can understand why that. Being devil's advocate, yes, it is an AOB, but we've got no highways objections. We've got no environmental health objections. We've got conditions for the light and the dust. So if you're minded to not grant this, I think you're going to have to think, and I think AOB is the only thing I can think of in planning terms, that you could actually refuse it on. So I think members, we need to look at this as if we are minded to say no, the reasons why, because we have got no statutory agencies other than the AOB, I think, that we can actually object or refuse on. So it's down to us members, I think, to come up with a reason if we feel that we are going to refuse it.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got two further speakers, Councillor Simpson-Vince and Councillor Matetsky. Councillor Falk makes a good point here. Remember what the rules are. We've had our 2 training sessions where we are reminded that if we wish to refuse something, we have to do so on strong planning grounds. And, I think Judy Falp has made the comments here, but quite clearly that we've still got some while to go in this debate. Councillor Simpson-Vince, followed by Councillor Matetsky, please.
This AONB, when did this site become part of an AONB? Did it predate? Because this quarry must have been there a while.
Matthew?
Do you know, I can't answer that question. I don't know when the AONB came into existence, but as you say, the quarry has been around definitely since the 1980s, and I do believe before.
Okay, so it's likely that it predates the AONB. Like Councillor Falp, I'm struggling to find any reasons, planning reasons, for a refusal on this one. If it is refused, what happens to that site? Because it's got permission on it until November, and it's a vast open site with dust and noise and vehicle movements. What happens on the 1st of December, for example?
If the landowner applicant did not wish to pursue anything else, in essence, the existing permission requires any materials that remain on site to be spread around and a relatively minimal restoration to be achieved with what's there. So it would remain as pretty much the shape it is now, with minimal restoration.
Okay, because looking at the overhead maps, it's pretty much sort of quite a scar on the landscape looking from the overhead. So It's a site that you do want to have some kind of restoration on. I do struggle with the 12 years. I do think if it goes ahead, we have to deal with the operational hours. Yeah, I don't know. This is a tricky one, and it's
it's an unusual one.
Yeah. We've got to go on planning balance. We've got to go on planning reasons. When I've read through this, and I said earlier, I've gone through this several times, trying to find legitimate planning reasons to refuse this, and I was struggling. And I agree with Councillor Phelps that the AONB, whilst it is there, doesn't predate that site. I think I would want to make sure that the conditions that are there are as tight as they can be in terms of signage, of coming in and out, maybe construction, how that junction is constructed in terms of allowing lorries in and out of that site. I think we need to look at the conditions on this one, because I think planning-wise we're going to struggle for legitimate planning reasons to refuse it.
Yeah. Matthew, would you like to comment on that?
The point I'm picking out from a lot of you here is the hours of operation and the Saturdays. I have had a conversation with the applicant's agent before the meeting and about potential things that are going to be raised. I think potentially there is some movement on that from the applicant's point of view. And do you want the applicant to comment on that?
Well, sir, can you comment on your movement? In the planning officer has suggested there may be some suggested movement in the hours of operation. Would you like to comment on that?
Thank you. I have had a discussion prior to this meeting with Matthew with regard to the working hours. We are conscious that whilst we've tried to make as many changes to the proposal as we could, we've not satisfied all the concerns, and we wouldn't be able to, I don't think. But if it's felt by the committee that Saturday should be removed, that's acceptable. We will rework the movements within the week and the volume in order to ensure that it gets completed still as quickly as possible, but Saturday working could go.
Thank you. Right, I've got three further speakers, Councillor Matetsky, Councillor Feeney and Councillor Kerridge. Councillor Matetsky, please.
Thank you. So first of all, to address the reduction of hours, I really don't see how that's going to work and how that's going to help. We've already been told that extending from 6 years to 12 years was because of the value of the incoming material, etc. So it's to make it financially viable. Now, if you remove a Saturday and you're removing 11 trucks or 22 movements on the Saturday, you're now taking sort of 20% of the material away. So if you're going to be not working on a Saturday, you're not going to be able to do it in the 12 years. So what you're going to be doing is extending the time. I don't really see how you can reduce the hours without extending the time to get the material to infill as you want to. So I really don't see how you can do one without doing the other. So I don't see how that's going to work. Regarding the dust and environmental health, even though there's no objections, I believe we're learning a lot at this moment in time about the effects of dust and silica and stuff like that in the air. We've already got these clean air zones in our towns and cities, so we're learning all the time. So even though there might not be an environmental health issue today, is it because we're not really aware of the actual things that are going on? I'm actually going to put my neck out here and actually give my fellow members a reason why we can refuse this application. And the reason we can refuse it is a question was asked, which I was going to ask, but another person asked about the recycling facility. The question was asked, if the applicant put in an application for a recycling facility on this site, would it actually be granted? And the answer, I think, was a categorical no, or it would be very difficult. So now we have to see if the advantages of having the facility on site outweigh it not being on the site or refusing planning permission. Now, I'm going to say that I believe that the advantage of having a recycling facility which otherwise would not be granted permission on the site does not outweigh the loss of amenity to the residents of the local people and also the local villages through traffic, etc., and the potential noise from the, not necessarily the 22 vehicle movements a day, but the noise that's going to be generated from the recycling facility. And I think that is the way I am leaning.
Thank you. Sir, can I just ask you about Councillor Matetsky's point about if you were to lower your number of movements, well, remove the movements on the Saturday, that you would not be able to complete your project in the timescale advised?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I wanted to come in and clarify this. I think there is some misunderstanding over this Saturday working and the vehicle movements on a Saturday. The transport assessment did not assume the same number of vehicles coming in on a Saturday morning as would come in through a working weekday. Saturday mornings are normally included. Don't forget, this material is coming in from construction sites. Construction sites don't work at the weekend. So the construction sites are not working on a Saturday. The Saturday working would normally be to catch up with the placement of material into the void that has been recycled during the week when it has been coming in, when there's been more material coming in. The Saturday morning, there's highly unlikely to be any vehicles coming into the site on a Saturday morning. And it certainly was never our intention to have the same number of vehicle movements coming in on a Saturday morning as would come in during the weekday. And all the transport assessment calculations have not assumed that. So the Saturday morning, losing the Saturday morning will not lose material coming in. It will simply lose time placing the material into the void. If they have to work a bit harder during the week to carry on doing that, then so be it. It won't make any difference to the operational time frame.
Thank you. Sorry?
Can I just come back on that, Chair?
Yes, quickly.
I don't know where he's saying that there's no construction takes place on the Saturday, because there's plenty of construction that takes place on the Saturday.
Councillor Feeney.
Thank you, Chair. I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Simpson-Vince's proposal around removing Saturday as a working day. I think particularly with the explanation that there is not anticipated the amount of lorries on that day, I think people have to do a bit more in the week, won't they, by the sounds of it, to avoid Saturday morning working. I'm concerned around the dust conditions, but I think that there is a management plan in place, and I think that I think a lot of what Councillor Simpson-Vince has said I would echo, which is we need to ensure that our officers are monitoring and ensuring that things like the routing agreements, things like the dust management plan actually happen, and I think that's really key for it, if I'm honest.
Thank you for that. Councillor Kerridge, please.
Thank you, and forgive my coughing. That's why I'm keeping the mask on. I have had a test, several of them, don't worry. So, turning to reasons, as started by Councillor Matetsky, I completely agree with his advantage. You know, what advantage is there compared to this being a poor location? I'm going to list a variety of policies and comments from different bodies to support my suggestion that we reject this application. Firstly, on page 23 from Warwickshire County Council Landscapes, their conclusion is essentially, in landscape terms, the proposed development and restoration would have minimal impact. So I think from a landscape point of view, what are we gaining? What is the advantage? Minimal and actually they may be talking about a minimal disadvantage because of the way the restoration has been suggested. Moving forward, from the Cotswold AONB Conservation Board, they have suggested that their preferred restoration would to leave this largely as it is, to form some kind of lowland grassland, which they say is a diminishing and valued ecological habitat. So that would take almost nothing to do and would result in a preferred option for the AONB board. That was on page 26 and 27, I believe. Moving forward through the report, I'm just taking this from what's been listed in the report. Well, we'll go to our policy, our waste policy, and the fact that we do recommend certain areas for being appropriate for this kind of activity, and this location is not one of them. We say it should be near large conurbations, or in the north of the county where there's a lot of development going on, or by a major road, none of which I believe is applicable to this. So yes, we should be looking at a benefit to outweigh that. I think there are very limited ecological benefits, in fact arguably none at all, very limited landscape benefits, arguably none at all, certainly no benefits to the community. So there's that. I'm going to put my glasses back on if we need a list of things. So, page 43 I'm going to. Paragraph 172, presumably of the NPPF, says areas of outstanding natural beauty have the highest status of protection in relation to conserving and enhancing landscapes and scenic beauty. So I think we have to really pay attention to the fact that it is an AONB. That is a very, very strong designation. So it's not something just to say, well, we've only got AONB. AONB on its own is enough. And within an AOB, it suggests, is there a need for the development? I see no clear need for this development. It's certainly against our policy. Is there scope for developing it elsewhere? I see no plans or evidence that scope has been looked at. And will there be a detrimental effect? And this is all within the paragraph 172. Will there be any detrimental effect to the environment, the landscape, etc., etc.? And yes, there will. Of course there will. We have seen there will be detrimental effect, especially from the HGVs, especially from the noise, quite possibly from the dust and the litter. These are all things to just chuck into the argument if you wish. Section 85 of something, the Countryside and Rights of Way Act, have regard to the purpose of conserving and enhancing the natural beauty of the area of outstanding natural beauty. Okay, there we go. That's section 85. We've got Appendix B of the NPPW, whatever that is. No. If someone can tell me what the NPPW is, National Planning Policy for Waste. Okay. Okay, we've got Appendix B. We need to demonstrate the quantitative or market need for this, and that hasn't been demonstrated. And will there be any visual impacts? Yes, there will be visual impacts. Will there be traffic? Yes, there will be traffic. Will there be dust? Yes, there will be dust. Noise and litter? Yes.
I think we get the message, sir.
You get I'm just giving a few numbers if we need policy numbers.
Okay, thank you.
And also, I'll just quickly list them. As far as Stratford District Council policy numbers go, you've got CS1, CS9, CS11.
And they were all in the report, weren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, they were. Thank you. Councillor Mills.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, some of the comments have already been made, but I was going to mention about the cutting down of the hours on Saturday. Would that increase the length of time over the years? That's being explained to us. No, it wouldn't, but I'm not sure it wouldn't. And also, I was looking on page 23, the visual impacts on this. They're talking about clearing out 160.8 metres to improve visibility splay. And this only be temporary because after 8 years they'll start planting again. Well, trees take about 25 years to make any effect. So you've got a big problem there, big scar. We have got problems with pollution. What social benefits are there with this? The impact on the neighbourhood is quite severe. We've been told. And the traffic effects, these are all things that all add up, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mills was the last speaker, so now we have really to come to our decision as to what we wish to do. So who is going to put forward a proposal? Councillor Matetsky.
Forward a proposal that we reject this proposal because the recycling facility on its own would not be acceptable in that location, and it does not outweigh the benefits of having it there for the infill as opposed to the loss of amenity as well as all the other points that have been raised.
Have you got that? Does anybody, would any of the officers like to comment on that? Ian?
I think if the committee is minded to refuse for any combination of the reasons that have been mentioned during debate, then the officers would like to come back to you after the vote to gather your views on what the consensus is as to the reasons on which to concentrate, because a lot of reasons have been mentioned, but we would want to nail down with you those reasons that we would rely on in the form of reasons for refusal, and then probably draft something up and circulate it by email later. I'm not making any assumptions as to how you will vote. Just I know a number of you are new to the committee, and that's the order in which we'd normally proceed. It's not a straightforward case. It's quite complex. There's a lot of choices to make as to reasons for refusal. So we'd come back and ask for a bit more of a conversation with you if you vote to refuse.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Matetsky has made a proposal. Does that find a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Mills. Hang on, I'm just catching my paperwork up here. Okay. Right, it's been proposed and seconded. Are there any other comments from members? Well, it has been proposed and seconded that planning permission be refused on this matter. And you've heard what our legal officer says. He will obviously take some soundings because a number of grounds have been put forward by various guests, particularly Councillor Kerridge, which were mainly contained within the report. So I'm going to put that to you. Those in favour of the proposal to refuse, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4. And against? That's 3. I make that 5. Helen, I'm not very good at counting today. I've got the wrong glasses on. That's it. Right, that falls 5 votes to 4. Does anybody else wish to make another proposal at this stage? Right, Councillor Simpson-Vince is proposing approval. Does that find a seconder, please? Oh yes, and are we people voting in favour of this should remember that this includes the matter relating to no vehicle movements, etc., on the Saturday. And you also mentioned something about, when you were presenting, that there'd been a suggestion made about a noise survey.
That's a condition within the report.
So that is already in there.
Yep.
I wasn't sure whether it was actually in the report. Okay, so Councillor Simpson Vince, followed by, seconded by Councillor Falp, is moving that permission is granted, subject to the note that we've altered the opening hours for the Saturday. Those in favour of that, please show. And against, please. I've got 2 against there. Well, and that means, can I have those who are abstaining then, please? That's 2, okay. On this particular matter, SDC 20C M009, planning permission is granted with a load of conditions that are set out in the papers, plus the one we've just mentioned. Thank you very much for that. That concludes this item. Can anybody who wishes to leave now do so, and then we'll get on with the next item. Sorry? Yeah. Chairman, everybody, can I just say that we'll have a quick 5-minute break because I made a mistake in the first part of the meeting, so I'm going to rectify it immediately after you come back. Just been asked to ask that when you want to speak, can you put your hand up and possibly leave it up until such time as the microphone gets to you. I'm not sure there's enough microphones for that, but please make sure the staff who are operating the PA system are aware that you wish to speak, because it will speed the operation up. Now, very few of you, except Helen Barnsley, noted the deliberate mistake of mine in the first part of the agenda, and that is that I omitted to do item 2 on the agenda. It was the sheer excitement that I had chairing this meeting. That is to note the delegated decisions that are made, and can I have somebody to propose that we note that, please? Proposed Councillor Simpson, seconded by Councillor Phelps. Those in favour of noting that, please. That's everybody. Thank you very much. So that's today's deliberate mistake out of the way. So let's get on with the next item on our agenda. Now, I have just been... Actually, I'm going to read this because it might concentrate people's minds. A meeting that lasts over 3 hours... committee, once it gets to 3 hours, the committee have to agree to continue or postpone the remaining items. So just think about that as we go along. Okay. Right. Item 4, then, please. So, Matthew, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This item relates to a school site, and the site is referred to as the former RNIB Pears school site. This was a unit that was constructed for and by the Royal National Institute for Blind People several years ago, and the proposals before you are in essence for the conversion and adaptation of the site or part of the site to form a new special education needs and disability school. Going forward, the proposal is that the school will be known as the Warwickshire Academy. The proposal, if I'll just give you an outline of the site. The site is, the Pears site was developed, as I say, about 10 years ago on part of what is the Exall Grange school site, or was the Exall Grange school site, which is a specialist school in itself. And the red line you see on that plan is the application site that's before you, and just the small section that's got 5 units within it, which are sort of T-shaped, are some bungalows and an administration building next to it. So when the site was developed as the Pears, it included a school building and it was a residential site, so that's why it's got 5 bungalow units on the site. The proposal as we speak today is within the red line area, so it's reuse of the main school building, the car parking area, the playing field, and there's a hydrotherapy pool on the site. The bungalows that you see in at the top end of the site, which is just below that blue line, and the administration building, they will, plans are being formulated still for how they will be used going forward, likely to be the subject of a future planning application going forwards. This is just to give you an indication of where we are. So we're on the northern side of Coventry, southern end of Nuneaton and Bedworth. So you, if you know where you are, you've got the Rico Arena over here, Prologis Park, Industrial Park on this side, and the Pears site is that in the middle. Just to give you, as we go in a bit closer, that shows you that, yeah, we've got the Pears site in here, residential properties on Blackberry Lane and Wheelwright Lane around here. This is the Exall Grange site, school, and their access is actually off a different road down here, Winding House Lane. And then there's another school, a primary, which also adjoins the site, called Wheelwright Lane Primary School. And that is just a closer view. And then the same aerial view with the red line around it, as I say, with these are the bungalows that are excluded from this application. But this is the main school building, existing car parking on site, and the hydrotherapy pool here. So, as I say, this is conversion and adaptation of the former Pears site. The proposal is that it will provide or create a school for 80 pupils with special education needs. These are pupils who are particularly exhibiting behaviours that challenge. The school, as I say, it's a unit that was built about 10 years ago. It actually stopped functioning as the pairs around about 2 years ago and has mainly remained unoccupied since that time. As I say, it's a two-phase development. The one before you today relates to reuse and repurposing of the school. At a later date, there'll be further proposals for the bungalows and the admin building. In terms of the development on site, the building itself basically remains as is externally. There will be internal alterations and repurposing of the building, which in themselves don't require planning permission. The parts of the development you are looking at and considering and determining are the external changes. Now, this includes the provision and addition of secure fencing around the boundary and within the perimeters of the site, additional car parking, the provision of 2 sports pitches and additional soft landscaping across the site. The fencing that's proposed on the site is 2.7 metre high weld mesh green fencing. This will, as I say, provide a secure boundary and will also separate and segregate individual areas within the site, which includes fencing around the car park, the sports area, and again separating a number of separate areas off or adjacent to classrooms. The existing fencing around the site, which is a mix of weld mesh fencing and palisade fencing, will remain, and the new fence would be erected inside the site. The sports pitches which are proposed are a multi-use games area which would be 42 metres by 18.5 metres. This would be surfaced with tarmac and would have the fencing 2.7 metres high around the boundary, and then there would be a grass sports pitch as well. I'll show you a plan in a minute. There would be car parking proposals, so 52 parking spaces would be provided on the site. This would be made up of existing parking provision that's on the site, plus additional and reconfigured parking. So I will go through that on the plan, but some of it's at the front, some of it's towards the rear. There would also be a further 52 spaces provided for phase 2 of the development going forward, so that is accommodated within the proposals. The access to the site would continue to be from Wheelwright Lane, which is in this position here, and that was constructed as part of the school development. And as I say, there'll be additional soft landscaping. The application states that the Special Education Needs and Disability School would address a need to provide places for pupils in the area. There's a growing requirement to provide specialist education provision, and in many cases these pupils are currently sent out of the area. The purpose-built school, the application would in essence bring back into use what was a purpose-built school, and it would provide specific education needs or cover for a specific need. In principle, that is acceptable because clearly it was a school and the proposal is to use it as a school again. There's 2 main issues to consider, I think, in the report, and that is traffic generation and traffic management and proximity of the school to Exhall Grange. If I just show you on here, so this is the Pairs school building and these are the school buildings of Exhall Grange. They are very close together, and the existing boundary is, whilst it's a weld mesh fence, there's clear views between the 2 sites, but I'll show you on photographs that shortly. In terms of the highways, the existing access off Wheelwright Lane in this location, currently there's a gate across that which is very slow moving, and it's recognised that that has created traffic problems of its own accord going back in time, and the plan is that that gate would remain open during the peak pupils arriving, pupils going home period, and a condition is proposed that would secure the timing of that gate, so that hopefully would address that traffic management issue. Also, as I've mentioned, the parking would be reconfigured and additional parking provided. If I just show you, this is the site as is, and this is the site as is proposed. So you've got existing parking just here, but additional parking would be provided in this location, which would actually be used by phase 2. but there would also be a new parking area provided in here within the site, and the existing area at the rear of the site, which is or has been used for parking, that will be reconfigured and laid out so that the parking is very much formalised. So that would result in 52 spaces being provided for the school. There would also be drop-off spaces within the school. The pupils at this school are likely to be arriving individually in many cases, so that would be by private car, taxi or specialist transport. So there is a possibility that you would have quite a lot of vehicles arriving at one time, either dropping off or picking up, and spaces will be provided to allow for up to 45 cars to, in essence, stack on the site. And I'll show you that plan in a second. A transport assessment was submitted with the application, and that shows that the development would not adversely impact or increase risks in terms of highway impact, and your own highways team agree with the assessment, and that an acceptable level of parking and vehicle stacking on the site has been proposed. So the highways response is no objection, subject to the site being constructed with the parking before it opens, and that there's a construction management plan in place, and that access and pickup strategy is agreed, and conditions are proposed within the report. In terms of the boundary treatment, it's probably best if I now go through some more plans. So you've got on this plan the parking. The multi-use games area is this area towards the rear of the site, and the sports pitch is next to it here on what is currently a grassed area. And then this plan shows how the fencing would be around the site. It might be difficult for you to see, but you have blue lines around the boundary of the site, and that's where the fencing will go. And as I say, it's inside the line of the existing fencing. There's also areas that are segregated and separated internally, and that there, the area that I'm showing you there is a balancing pond, so there's a desire to have that securely fenced. There'll be fencing around the multi-use games area, fencing around the car park, and then other areas of fencing adjacent to the building to separate areas off. The point that's raised about the fencing is in terms of this boundary here, where it adjoins Exhall Grange School, which takes you to about that point there, so all this area here. The fencing that is proposed is a weld mesh fencing, and it's a very small mesh fence. So again, you'll get from that it's such a small mesh that actually the visibility through it is going to be quite limited, but you still will be able to see through it potentially. The point I've just made about the vehicle queuing and stacking on the site, this plan again is probably difficult to see from your distance, but all along the access road here are shown basically points where cars can queue within the site whilst dropping off and picking up, and that provides space for 45 cars to do that, which should avoid the possibility of cars queuing on the highway coming into the site. The plans, again, these are not going to be easy to see, but it just shows that plans have been submitted which will allow landscape planting to be agreed and planted within the site, and that will be secured by condition. And that's sort of one end of the site, and this is the other end of the site. If I just take you through the photographs to show you the site, this is the school frontage as is and the existing access. The access will remain the same. This is the current security gate, which is the one that's slow moving, but that will be just left open during the peak periods of traffic coming in and out of the site. This is the admin building I've referred to, which will be used and come forward as part of a future proposal. The school building is this building you can see in the background, and this is a closer view of the school building and the frontage. So this is the roadway into the site and how you'd access the car parking. Just taking you quickly through photographs. This is the school building again, and this side of the access road. To the left is where you would get the new car parking area centrally within the site. Again, just further views of the existing school building, which we can come back to. You'd have obviously the building on the left, car parking on the right. This is where you'd have the new car parking in the foreground in front of the building, and again just more views across to the housing in the distance, where you'd have the car parking and the sports pitches on that area. I'll just take you quickly through these photographs. This is a view of the frontage of the school. So you've got existing car parking shown. In essence, that parking would be increased along this area here to increase the overall car parking on site. But again, that would be used for phase 2. Within this area is where you'll get the multi-use games area and the formalised sports pitch and the car park at the frontage. Again, just if I quickly go through these ones to get to the fence line between the school and Exhall Grange. So this is the corner of the site where the additional car parking would be at the rear of the site. Right, this shows you where this is the Pears building and these are the Exhall Grange school buildings. Now, there is a fence between there, which you will see in a second. This is a welded mesh fence, but it's a very wide welded mesh, so clearly there's clear views between the two sites. And the views between the sites, this Exhall Grange School have expressed concerns about proximity of the two school buildings together and potential conflicts between the two operations of the schools. They both have children with special needs, and the Exhall Grange School are keen to see sort of a more fence that limits the views and ability to obviously see between the two sites. There's clearly been some attempt made in the past here to put some element of screening along here, but clearly that's now showing out signs of age. There have been some discussions about increasing the fence or altering the fence along here, or indeed adding some sort of screening to the existing fence. The new fence would go immediately behind this one, so it's going to in itself limit the visibility, but we are proposing a condition whereby a scheme will need to be submitted to secure any additional provision should that be required. So this is just giving you an idea of the proximity to the school sites and the issues that have been raised by the neighbouring school. As you go round, I've mentioned in my report, you also have on this site a caretaker's bungalow in this corner, and again, clearly it's clear views between the two sites in this point. As you go further round into sort of the western side of the site, again, the fencing will go along just behind this wooden fencing, and as we just get towards the side of the site, there will be additional areas of fencing within this side of the site. These last few photographs I took from the Exhall Grange side of the development, looking back at the Pears site. So again, you see what view they are getting. So this is from Exhall Grange, looking at the Pears site, and you see at the moment they do have a clear view of the site, and that's just another view you get from that location. So, as I say, the conclusion on this one are, this will an application that brings an existing school building that's not been used for several years back into use, and it would be a positive reuse of that building, providing for a specialist education need. The appearance of the building actually would remain basically the same as it is, but the external additions of fencing and the car parking and the multi-use games area would be additional, but given the use, previous use, and the character of the site, they are considered to be acceptable. Conditions are proposed to manage traffic, to address the boundary treatment issue that has been raised, and also ecology and surface water management. And it's considered that these will mitigate any potential impacts.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Right then, members, can we then... Councillor Sarah Feeney is in there by a short head. Councillor Feeney, we're into technical questions now, members. Councillor Feeney, over to you.
Thank you. There isn't any indication on the application as to how many pupils there would be. 'Cause I'm kind of thinking 45 cars, is that a good amount? Is that not a good amount? So it'd be interesting to know how many pupils there would be and what ages they are, because that would be really helpful to know for me. And the access to phase 2, I know we're not talking about phase 2 per se today, but actually have we already considered where phase 2 will be accessed from the existing school site? Because I assume the school may well be up and running by the time we get into the planning, to the regulatory committee bit of phase 2.
Yeah. Can I just point out, I should have done so at the beginning of the item, we have got representatives of the applicant, David Lockhart, Nathan Capps, Tony Wynn and Andrew Hardcastle, who are involved in that scheme, and I presume it's the people who are sitting over there. And so if there's any questions you can't answer, I'm sure one of them will be able to. Sorry, I interrupted you.
That's fine. The school will provide places for 80 pupils.
Sorry, 80?
80. It is a high percentage or ratio of teachers to pupils because of the need of the pupils. The age group of the pupils at the school will be ages between 9 and 19. And in terms of the proposals for the future use of what is phase 2, the bungalows and then the administration building, they are yet to be determined, so they're not known in detail. But the point you make about access is one that your highways team have picked up on and sort of made the applicant jump through hoops. And it's why this area here is additional parking that would be provided for this area here when it comes forward. So there's 52 spaces on site which would be allocated to that use, which at the moment is envisaged that's likely to be sufficient. The phase 2 would use the same access, but the school, in terms of the fencing around the boundary of the school, happens sort of at this end here. So they would have their own sort of ability to get into the site at the entrance into the site.
I think I may not be being very clear, but used to working with people in education, I know that quite rightly schools are quite concerned about who has access to site and who doesn't have access to site. And I just wondered whether, particularly with parking spaces so close to the school for phase 2, whether that had been pulled up in consideration or not. Because of site usage.
For colleagues who might be able to answer that better, but in terms of the site usage, the proposals before you have been designed for the cohort of pupils that are going to be using the site, and the proposals for the boundary fencing enable that to be secured sort of around the building here, so that this parking area at the frontage would be separated by fencing.
Okay. Can I then ask, are there any other technical questions? Right, Councillor Humphreys is next, then Councillor Matetsky.
Thank you very much. And is the school intended to only work on Monday to Friday and weekend? And I say that as a grandfather with 3 grandsons who play football on a Saturday, 7, 10 and 12. And I can't go in 3 different directions, but where they will play, and they live in North Warwickshire, they'll play at Junction, up at the Land Rover plant on the M54, Walsall University. They go anywhere where they can find a mugger. They're all different, and they're all obviously good quality. But if that's open and that's got that facility, is there any chance that facility, because in that area, a mugger and for 5, 7s and 9, I'm not talking about full-size pitches, I'm talking about the 5, 7s and 9s, which takes the under 13s. Is there any chance that there's an operation that could become available at weekends? Thank you.
I think the applicants might want to answer this, but I think the short answer is no. This is a school for a specialist cohort of pupils, and clearly it will, I believe, mainly operate Monday to Friday, but there is no proposal for the facilities on the site to be available for community use.
Sir, would you like to comment?
That's absolutely what Matthew's spoken of is absolutely correct. Yes, there is no, at present, there isn't an intention to open the mugger out of school hours.
Okay. Councillor Matetsky.
Thank you. Now, I know this is before my time as a councillor here, but I believe that this council declared a climate emergency, and I was wondering if there's any proposals in here to make the school more sustainable, anything to do with the lighting, the heating, or things like that.
As I say, the school building is basically going to remain much as it is already, and it's only 10 years old. There will be some reconfiguration within the site. I don't know if the applicants might be able to answer that question better in terms of what they're going to be doing with the building.
So at present, the intention is to re-lamp or put new lighting into the school, which is more sustainable. But it's also worthy of note that the school site as a whole has a district heating system, which is considered to be, in terms of sustainability, it's high up on the agenda for sustainability credentials. So it's a fairly it's a substantial site at present, and we're sub-metering and splitting out services wherever we can, but trying to maintain and retain.
Thank you. Any other technical questions, members? There aren't. Members, it's really down to debate and decide whether what you wish to do about this one. I would say that looking at it, it's continuing in its current use, so I can't think that there would be anything tremendous unless there's a particular point or amendment that anybody would wish to make. Councillor Simpson-Vince is first.
Thank you. It's nice to see a site like this being repurposed and dealing with a need that we know we've got across Warwickshire. So I'm quite happy to move for approval on this.
Okay. Does that find a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Mills. Any other speakers, please, on this? Okay. Councillor Jill Simpson-Vince has proposed, and Councillor Chris Mills has seconded, that planning permission be granted in accordance with the recommendations, together with any conditions, etc., that's related in the paperwork. Those in favour of that, please show. 8. Is that 8? Or can't I count?
9.
It is 9. I can't count. 9. That's quite clearly carried. Thank you very much indeed. Planning permission on this application, which is number NBB 21CC 004, is granted. Okay, moving swiftly on, because I'm sure everybody doesn't want to be here until the next week. Can we then go to item number 5 on our agenda, which is Milverton School, Great Head Road, Leamington Spa.
Right, sorry, excuse me if I just...
Oh, it's Sally. It's all changed. It's Sally's turn.
It is. Whoops, sorry, gone too far. Okay, thank you, Chair. This application is for Milverton Primary School in Leamington Spa. The proposal is for an air handling unit and ductwork and additional cedar vertical cladding associated with the development. The primary school is, as I say, in Leamington Spa in the northwest part of the town centre, located in the Leamington Conservation Area. In February 2019, an emergency flue was installed on the roof of the school kitchen building. Without that installation, the kitchen would at that time have been condemned and closed down. We didn't hear about this until Warwick District Enforcement Officers contacted us to forward complaints from local residents about the appearance of the installation, and I'll show you a photo of that when I come to it. A planning application was then submitted for replacement ducting and flue to serve that kitchen, and that was installed and approved with timber screening to hide the flue from the local residents. The current application is for the installation of another run of ductwork over the kitchen roof. The previous installation was the air supply unit, and this is now the extraction. They're also proposing the installation of an additional air handling unit, which is to the side of the kitchen building at ground floor level. And that has actually been installed already, if I can take you through my photos in a minute. It is then going to be screened by additional timber cladding to the side along the southern elevation of the building, which will, as I say, screen it from local residents. The application has been supported by a noise assessment, noise impact assessment, and an odour assessment, which have both been accepted by environmental health officers at Warwick District. If I just take you through some of my photos. The school building itself, the kitchen, is this white building, and the installation is over this section of flat roof, and the air handling unit is to the side of the building. The plant that was approved in 2019 is looking down a plan elevation, a plan view of the building. So the roof, as installed at present, is the ducting over the roof and a supply unit on the side. And an additional, in green, is shown the new ductwork that is being installed, and an additional air handling unit to the side of the building. In elevation, the southern view is showing again what has already been installed, timber cladding to the side to screen the installation, and that is to be extended in that brown area to the side. Again, this is the elevation showing the air handling unit to the side of the building, and will be screened by an additional amount of cladding to the side of the building. This is a photo of the installation as it was originally done as the emergency prior to the first planning application, and was deemed unacceptable in the conservation area. Neighbour described it as space junk, basically. So that has now been replaced. If I take you on to the existing photos, this is a photo taken in March, and they were in midway doing that first approval, the installation, and you can see ductwork here, which was put in a temporary position. That's actually been moved slightly further to the right of this photo now, and is entirely behind this screen, and there's additional timber cladding to come into the side here. Again, this is as installed previously. This is an elevation view from the side, the southern elevation, and shows the extent of the plant to the side of the building, and the extended timber cladding will screen all of that silver area. The finished appearance will not be silver, it's going to be insulated and coloured black. That's the corrected position of the ducting as now installed. And again, this is a photo I took last week, showing the plant had been moved across, and the framework here it will then be extended across for the additional cladding. The building faces out onto a service road between the backs of residential properties in the conservation area. In terms of the location in the conservation area, we're required by law to pay special attention to the desirability of preserving or enhancing the character of the conservation area. The original installation was obviously regarded as unacceptable there, and the replacement has preserved the character of the conservation area in terms of screening and the reduction in height of the ducting over the roof. There's no objection from environmental health given the noise and odour controls, and with conditions, the recommendation for this is approval.
Okay. Technical questions, please. Councillor Falk.
It's not actually a technical question, it's just can it be noted that I am the portfolio holder for Health and Community Protection at Warwick District Council. So it would be by environmental health officers who've been talking to you. So it doesn't prejudice me in any way, I believe. But I will check that with legal. But
Ian, presents you with no problems at all.
that's fine. So I will carry on to listen to the debate. But I thought it was important. I noted that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members on this one, please? It appears not. Therefore, I would say it's a pretty straightforward one. Can I have a proposal from the floor, please? Councillor Simpson-Vince.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm happy to propose this application.
As set out. Okay. Seconded by Councillor Matetsky. Thank you. Any other comments, speakers, amendments? Okay, it's been proposed by Councillor Simpson-Vince, seconded by Councillor Matetsky, that permission be granted in accordance with the recommendations as set out in our papers. Those in favour of that, please show. I think that's the same again, isn't it? It's 9. Thank you very much. That planning permission of that application is granted 9 votes to 0. Thank you. We now move on to item 6, which is Campion School. Over to you, Sally.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm ever so sorry. I'm ever so sorry because, yes, you'd have to, wouldn't you? Oh, yes, indeed, because otherwise you'd be hanging around for a bit, wouldn't you? So, thank you very much. Thank you. Carry on, Sally.
Thank you. This application is for Campion School, again in Leamington Spa. The application is for a sixth form building at the school, a multi-use games area, and a major refurbishment of the existing timber-clad sports hall, a cycle hub, and minor works, some of which are permitted development. Campion School is a secondary school, years 7 to 6th form. It's located on the southern side of Leamington. If I take you down to the aerial view first. It's, as I say, to the south of Leamington Spa. The Asda supermarket is located to the north of the school site. So Asda itself is here, and their car park and their petrol filling station. The railway line running between Leamington and Banbury runs along the entire western side of the application site. And the remainder of the site is surrounded by residential development with new development, or more recent housing development to the south of the site. The residential development in the area has increased the pupil numbers. In September 2018, the school changed from a 5 form entry to an 8 form entry, with capacity of the school being increased in 2 phases. The first phase of the development was approved as a planning application in 2019, with the provision of 17 classroom maths and science building. That work was completed and the building was occupied in the autumn term 2020. By 2024, with the increase in the school roll, the number of pupils by 2024 will increase to 1,202. Obviously then, as the 8 form entry continues through the school, the population will grow further, and this phase 2 development covered by the current application is for the expansion of the school accommodation to cater for that increasing population as it moves through the school. By the school year 26-27, the increase will be to 1,400 pupils. If I can take you through the details of the application itself. So for the 6th form building, it's located in this area, red coloured building to the northern side of the site, north of the existing buildings. The sports hall to be refurbished is coloured orange, and it's this existing building which will be the appearance changed. and reconstructed largely. There's a multi-use games area to the south of the existing school buildings in the northern part of the playing field. There are also permitted development works, coloured here in yellow, re-roofing of existing buildings. There is a modification to the roundabout, actually. If I go back up, the roundabout serving the school access is to the north of the school. There are proposals to make amendments to the capacity of that roundabout because of the increasing school pupil numbers. In addition, there's a proposal for an electricity substation within the school grounds, which is shown in the central location. And in green is a cycle hub, which is a facility to be provided once a temporary building in that location has been removed. The sixth form building, as I say, is located on the northern area of the site. It's a largely L-shaped building in 2 wings. It's a flat roof building going to 7.9 metres in height to the parapet. It's providing 6 classrooms, common room, study area and ICT facility. The western wing is some 30 metres by 9 metres and the eastern wing 22 metres by 10 metres. The materials proposed would be white render and metal infill cladding panels. I'll just show you the floor plans. It's a 2-storey building served by 2 staircases and a lift, providing access to all flat roof construction with it's been designed because it's in a prominent location on the northern side of the site, so it will be seen from the road network and from the roundabout area to the north of the school. This sports hall is currently a barrel vaulted roofed building, timber clad with red bricks at ground floor level. That is to be substantially refurbished. It's currently uninsulated, the existing building, so the existing structure isn't strong enough to take the additional insulation required. So it will be, as I say, substantially refurbished. The new appearance will be blue bricks at ground floor with a flat roof and a white and blue rendered elevation. The other element of the development is the MUGA, the multi-use games area, to be located to the south of the existing school buildings. The location of this has really been determined by the Sport England, who advised that was the best location given the impact potentially on the playing fields elsewhere. That site is actually a raised area at present and would be levelled to accommodate the MUGA. As I mentioned previously, there are requirements to make alterations to the roundabout on Chesterton Drive, Sydenham Road, Prospect Road, to the north of the school site. The development also serves all the housing to the north, east and south of the development, and in order to prevent any build-up of traffic and ensure there's a free flow, the capacity is there for the future development. There's a requirement for the westbound spur of this eastern section of the roundabout to be widened. It's currently 1 lane and it needs to be widened to 2 lanes to ensure free flow of traffic there. The alterations have been agreed in principle by your highways officers, and there's no objection from the Highway Authority. There is a condition recommended that that work be implemented before the sixth form building is occupied. That's the current appearance of that spur of the roundabout that would need to be widened. In terms of car parking on the school site, the car parking provision on the previous application was accepted to meet the Warwick District Council's parking requirement for the increase in staff numbers, which were going to 186 by 2024. The current proposal indicates that staff numbers would increase further to 194 by 2027. There are actually an additional 11 car spaces proposed, 2 of which are disabled spaces. The condition is also recommended for the car spaces to be provided before the sixth form building is occupied. One of the conditions I have recommended in my report in paragraph 5.46 was a pinch point within the access road within the school itself, that needs to be adjusted and widened prior to the occupation of the sixth form. Having revisited the site last week, I've taken a photo. I'm actually satisfied that has already been done, so we can remove condition 19 of the recommended conditions. In terms of cycle parking provision, the cycle hub is to be located on the site of a temporary building at the eastern end of the central car park. The provision was increased as part of the phase 1 development that has already been approved, and that development was required by Warwick District Council's environmental health officers as part of the mitigation for the impact of the development on the air quality management area in South Leamington. It was one of the requirements for that to overcome air pollution. Again, in terms of cycle parking, there's no objection from the Highway Authority to this application, subject to conditions. In terms of ecology, 11 trees are to be removed to accommodate the sixth form building. They would be replaced by 28 additional trees of various species. In terms of bats on the school site, the existing sports hall is timber clad, and there was a bat survey undertaken to ensure that no bats would be impacted. There were 2 surveys undertaken, and the results of that there were bats in the area but none in that actual building. So again, it is possible for my report to be updated, and for condition 4, which requires an additional bat survey, that condition can be removed. In terms of the construction and environmental management plan, a document has been submitted by Speller Metcalfe as part of the application to support, which did include both ecology and highway information, which would need to be submitted prior to the development commencing. The ecology information, I think, is sufficient in that document, but there are insufficient details to satisfy highways, and therefore there is a condition recommended for submission of additional details in terms of where parking for construction staff will be and for maintaining the no mud or debris on the road. So that's a condition for that to be provided. In terms of archaeology on this site, there is the potential for archaeology, and there were surveys undertaken on the phase 1 development. They will be required again on phase 2, particularly in the location of the sixth form building and the mugger, both of which are located on raised ground, which will need to be levelled. In terms of the sixth form site, there's a trial trenching requirement, and that condition has been phrased to ensure that work is undertaken prior to, I think some of that can actually start before the application work starts, if it's approved. In terms of the mugger application, the mugger site, the ground level will need to be reduced because it's currently on a mound, but I think the ground levels will not go down beneath the original ground level and shouldn't impact the archaeology beneath. There is a condition phrased, though, to ensure that, firstly, there's proof that the archaeology won't be impacted, and secondly, if no trial trenching is required at this stage, a condition 8 is proposed to remove permitted development rights so that in future, if the mugger is refurbished or amended in any way, that it doesn't go down beneath the original ground level without consent, to ensure there's no impact on archaeology there. In terms of the impact on neighbouring residential properties, I've received no objections from residents. The nearest residential properties are 60 metres away from the sixth form building and 100 metres from the sports hall and the mugger. The school boundaries are screened by vegetation, and it's considered to be no impact in terms of the lighting that's proposed on the mugger, and noise generated by that would have no adverse impact on neighbouring residents. Conditions are recommended to control levels of noise. Environmental health have suggested a condition as well, and a condition is recommended ensuring that the lighting is installed as submitted to ensure that the lux levels don't spread beyond the school site. In terms of flood risk and drainage, we've had no objection from the flood authority, although there is a recommendation for the final details of the surface water drainage to be submitted, so that is a requirement. In terms of environmental health, as I previously mentioned, the scheme does have an impact potentially on the air quality management area in southern Leamington, and as a result requires type 1 and type 2 mitigation measures. The cycle hub, which has already been agreed in phase 1 development, would meet type 1 mitigation. There were 3 electric car charging points installed as part of the phase 1 development in the car park. They've been provided, but I don't think they have an electric power supply yet, and that is part of this current application for the substation to be installed. Environmental Health at Warwick District have agreed that the 3 car spaces for charging points is acceptable to meet both phase 1 and phase 2 development. Again, so there's no objection from Environmental Health subject to the recommended conditions. If I just can take you quickly through my photos just to show the site. Going into the site itself is the entrance from the roundabout. This is where I thought previously there was a pinch point in the road. There's clearly access for 2 vehicles to pass, and it won't hold traffic up into the site. This is looking back towards the entrance to the school, and the development site for the sixth form is on this side on the right. Sixth form building would be in this location, and the mound would be reduced in height. The trees in this location would all be removed. This is stood on that raised area, looking back out towards the entrance to the school site. On the northern boundary, this is the boundary there's a footpath on the other side and links to the Asda site and the petrol station at Asda. Again, that's the hedgerow that bounds the site with Asda beyond. The electric car charging points are in this location here in the central car park area. This is taken from outside the site, looking at the cycle path and footpath that links between the school and the Asda site. This was the boundary photos taken in March, and again I went out last week, and obviously at this time of year it's substantially more screening. And the footpath through to the Asda site beyond the boundary to the school. This is a view back from further along the road beyond the site, and the sixth form building will be in this location here behind the entrance to the school and the petrol station. And again, this is on the western spur into the roundabout. This is the access to the school, and the sixth form building is in this location here. Going through onto the school, the existing sports hall is, as I say, timber clad and will be replaced. The form of the building is to be a flat roof rather than that vaulted roof. This is the phase 1 building that was approved and occupied last year, and the materials here are to be reflected in the refurbishment of the sports hall. This is from the playing field looking back towards that new building and the timber sports hall. So I think the new appearance of the building will reflect more closely the appearance of the school buildings on site now. This is the site of the games area. It's a raised area on the school site, and beyond that is the line of the railway. And looking down across the playing field, this is the line of the railway, and the mugger itself will be in that location. This is looking down across the playing fields, show the distance away to the residential properties on the southern side and the eastern side of the playing fields. Existing cycle provision on site is to be increased, and this is the building that will be removed to accommodate the cycle hub area. A view across the central car park area, additional cycle provision, and there's some further cycle provision to be provided. And this is looking across the car park area. I think the electric points are in this location to the side, and the site of the sixth form building, is in that location there to the north of the school. As I say, there are a few conditions that can be removed. Condition 4 relating to a bat survey, and condition 19 relating to the widening of the access road internally is no longer required. We have no highway objections to this application. Environmental health are satisfied, subject to conditions controlling noise from plant on site and to ensure the mitigation measures for the air quality management area are controlled. And subject to those conditions, the recommendation is for approval.
Thank you very much, Sally. Our next port of call, of course, is for technical questions. Have we any? Councillor Matetsky.
First, I'd like to say I welcome in the proposal that it mentions that it's going to be of a sustainable design, that can use air source heat pumps and the fabric first approach, so that's very welcome. My question is around the projected children numbers, pupils, and you mentioned that over 1,000 by 2024. Now, does that take into account the fact that the proposed Oakley Grove School in Bishop's Touchbook will be opened in 2023, which is maybe going to take away some of the pupils out of this school? And also, does it take into account, I notice in 2.1 that it mentions about the proposed 500 houses south of the site, so does it take into account the pupil numbers that might be generated from that potential site?
My understanding is that the additional pupil numbers are coming as a result of the residential developments in the area, and the catchment, the school has changed from a 5-form entry to an 8-form entry, so it has been approved to increase over time to meet that capacity. That increase in pupil numbers is now arriving, and it won't be until 2027, 2026, 27, that it reaches the full capacity as a result of that increase in the form entry. So it's going to actually 1,400 by 2026, 27, and those pupils are coming from the local area as the housing development grows. That's my understanding. We do have the applicant here as well if we need to.
So this is a bit of my concern, because some of that future development is from the 500 homes which are proposed south of the school. But then there's a problem, I believe, with that due to access through the school. So it's almost like the school needs the development to get this, but then the school also needs to provide an access route to the development to get the pupils. So
I think there are adequate pupils arriving already at the school with the current development levels that are. The Year 7 recently was at capacity before the expansion to an 8-form entry. So there is a demand locally for this number of school places, is my understanding, without that additional development coming on board.
Okay. Thank you. Any other technical questions, members? Sir. Councillor Humphreys, please.
being boring about the facilities again, because it is a normal school, will it actually have those facilities available at weekends for local children? There are a lot of soccer, but there's also hockey, etc.
I might actually pass that over to
let's ask the experts.
To the applicant, because I don't know on that, to be honest.
My understanding is that the multi-use games area that's going in will serve the community, and the Academy does already use the facilities at the weekends. There's tennis courts which are used, and that will expand to support the local community.
Okay. Anybody else? Right, councillors, what do you want to do with this one? Councillor Jill Simpson-Vince is there by a short head.
Thank you. I'm happy to move this for approval.
And Councillor Mills, are you going to second? Thank you very much. Thank you. It's been proposed and seconded. Let me just get my notes down. You know what I'm like, and getting my bits and pieces down. Okay. Those in favour of grant, please show. Oh, we're in a good mood today. Again, all 9. Thank you very much. Planning permission is granted 9-0. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there we are, you see. Oh, that's just getting carried away, isn't it, really? Okay. Judy did not vote, so it's 8-0. Thank you very much. Okay. Right. Thank you for that. Planning permission on that is granted, subject to the conditions, etc., etc. It's 13:21, and I'm sure we might have enough time if we apply our thing to get on with this. So, shall we carry on? Thank you. Right. Sally, it's over to you.
This should actually be quite quick.
Good.
I only have a single image to show you. This is not actually a planning application, it's a discharge of condition on a previous planning application that was approved by committee. The condition is for the discharge of the green travel plan. Details have been submitted to discharge this prior to the occupation of an extension to High Meadows School in Coleshill, North Warwickshire. This would normally be done as a delegated matter by planning officers, but it was resolved at committee when the original application for the extension to the school was determined that on that occasion members felt that they should be involved in approving the green travel plan. Travel plan is a document which sets out the measures to be taken to reduce the number of car trips to the school in order to improve safety and provide a healthier and more environmentally friendly form of transport. A green travel plan is usually required 6 months or so after a school has been in operation. But in this case, the condition was phrased that it's required prior to the occupation of the 4 new classrooms. The classrooms have now been constructed, they're completed, and they're currently handed over to the school for the internal fit-out, which is being carried out to put in the ICT requirements, furniture, etc. And the pupils basically are waiting for the outcome of today's meeting to know if they can start moving into their new classrooms. The pupil numbers in the travel plan, because it's a new development and pupils, this is again, it's a school gone from an infant school to actually a primary school. So the numbers are increasing over time, and the 4 classrooms were required to accommodate them. What we don't have in the travel plan document are the assessments and the answers to the questionnaires of those new pupils that will be using the 4 classrooms. So the full capacity of the development isn't yet highlighted by the current submission of the Green Travel Plan. It can't be, they're not there yet, all of them. I've consulted with Highways and have a positive response to the document. It was agreed that it was acceptable to discharge the condition, but it will need to be reviewed and updated once the pupils have occupied the building, say in another few months' time. That is part of a normal green travel plan process, and we would expect that as a part of the processing anyway for a regular 3-monthly survey to be taken of pupils and how they're coming to school, and what measures can be taken to reduce parking in the area. So for that reason, the document submitted is, I would say, from the comments I've had from Highways, is acceptable to discharge that condition. I'm not sure how we then produce the document to do that, if so.
Well, you're asking the wrong person there, Sally, aren't you? So.
Sure, but it's to members if they're satisfied that it's acceptable to discharge.
Yeah. Do we know how, can you comment on this? How we produce this document to discharge the condition?
We send a letter.
Right. There we are. Not complicated, though. Okay, there we are. Thank you. Right, are there any technical questions that members have on this? It is a technical matter, so there's going to be a technical question that will be here. Anybody? I think you're pushing it to an open door here. In that case, can I ask for a proposal, please? Councillor Simpson-Vince is first. You need to get quicker, everybody else, because Councillor Simpson-Vince is very quick on these things.
Thank you. I'd just like to say Councillor Cook and myself, as previous members of Regulatory, know this school well. This has had the reason this has come here today is it had a somewhat troubled and problematic history, and actually is an example how Regulatory Committee do not always say yes to any school buildings or temporary buildings. And if you look back on the history of this one, you'll see that one. So it's quite nice to have one come through today for this school that we can just say yes to. So I'm quite happy to move approval for this.
And is that seconded? Seconded by Councillor Kenner. Okay. Right, has been proposed and seconded. Those in favour of that, please show. That's quite clearly carried. I'm not even going to guess at the number. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think that's a very good idea, and I welcome that. We're at the end of our agenda. Can I firstly thank the presenting planning officers who both presented 2 excellent reports, etc. And I thank them, and can I thank for all the officers, and indeed for the PA system and the cameramen who've tried to convey our meeting to those outside. It's not been easy because this is an unusual room with very odd acoustics, but I do think it has been much better with the PA system. So can I thank everybody for their attendance and declare the meeting closed? I just need to have a word.